The stories I'm about to share with you are from The Tragedy at Devil's Hollow and Other Kentucky Ghost Stories by Michael Paul Henson. I would like to give thanks to those in assistance tonight, Mr. Chris Schaus, Ed Hughes, Clay Case, Miss Stacy Kindred, and Brody the Wonder Dog. Headless Timberman. During the timber cutting days of 1885 to 1910, a sawmill where dozens of men were employed sat beside a certain old gravel road in Estill County. The hands-only form of entertainment at the day's end was playing cards, pitching horseshoes, and telling stories. One night just after payday, a poker game was in progress. Moonshine was flowing free, and what started as a friendly argument turned into a fight. During the yelling, the cussing, and the scuffling, one of the men grabbed a large knife and started swinging wildly. The melee came to a sudden halt when the knife wielder's frenzied slashing beheaded one of the men. The other said the headless man staggered down the road from the bunkhouse for about 100 feet before he fell. Several years after the incident, a farmer was driving a wagon along this road when a man without a head jumped in front of his team. The terrified animals ran away with the wagon. Luckily, the farmer jumped to safety. Thereafter, the apparition was seen almost nightly by those using this road. On one occasion, a group of young people returning home from a dance were amazed to see a headless body, blood streaming from a horrible stump of a neck, standing before them. Scared witless, the group scattered in all directions. The apparition began to chase 3 girls who ran down the road. One of the young women fell and broke her arm. She said later, as the apparition passed directly over her, she felt only what seemed to be a breeze. Later that night, the group gathered at one of their homes. After calming the young people, several fathers armed with shotguns and carrying lanterns walked the entire stretch of road, but neither saw nor heard anything unusual. The latest known sighting of this apparition was in August of 1978. John Rose, a farmer who lived in the vicinity of this old and little-used road, had gone to the grocery store about 3 miles from his farm. Returning home, his car just stopped, although it had recently been serviced and should have been in good condition. When Rose got out to see if he could get it started, he saw what he first thought to be a white cow standing beside the road. The animal, or whatever it was making a long gasping noise, like a person smothering. Then it moved toward him. The only weapon Rose carried was a pocket knife. He backed up a few steps, took out his knife, and opened it. The moon was bright, and when the apparition, for he could see now that this was not an animal, started to follow him with outstretched arms, Rose realized that he had come face to face with the ghost of the headless logger. Rose is made of stern stuff and does not scare easily. He is a quite sober farmer, not given to foolishness or superstition. He told me that he'd made up his mind in a second that he'd be damned if a ghost or anything else was going to scare him into running to some neighbor's house for help. Rose swears that when the apparition grabbed him around the waist, he could actually feel a body against his. He stabbed it in the chest several times. All the while he could hear long gasping sounds coming from whatever he was fighting. After a few minutes, the apparition released him and ran into the woods. After the attack, Rose walked a half a mile to a neighbor's home. The neighbor later described his condition to me. Danged if he didn't look like a stuck hog. Blood was all over him, and his left arm was cut in several places. Rose was taken to a hospital where his wounds were treated. Some cuts were so severe that stitches were required. I have looked at the scars on the left arm of John Rose. They are very real, and beyond any doubt he tangled with something. Something that must also been real. I have walked this old road, and I have seen the spot where the sawmill stood, where the headless logger staggered down the road and fell. It is a quiet, lonely place, and no one or nothing accosted me as I retraced the steps of John Rose and others before him. You never know.